Hey guys, we are here today to do 1.6, which is order of operations. Hoping this is a review for you. Let's start off by looking at the actual order of operations. When a numerical or algebraic expression contains more than one operation symbol, the order of operations tells which operation to perform first, and this applies from now until the end of math. First thing you always want to look for is grouping symbols, and you want to perform the operations within the grouping symbols first. Once you're inside of them, you also follow this list. The second is evaluating powers or exponents. Third, we perform multiplication and division from left to right. You always read left to right, whichever one comes first. And the same is for addition and subtraction, which is the last two that we look at. Over here you see, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. Many of you are familiar with this. The problem with this is that it makes you feel like multiply comes before divide and add comes before subtract. It's not true. Multiply and divide should be on the same line because they are equivalent, and we go from left to right, as well as add and subtract. So let's look at an example. There are no parentheses or grouping symbols, so the next thing is exponents. I do have an exponent here. Now this one is a little tricky. You may think that this is -4 times -4, but it is not. In order for you to have -4 times -4, it would have to have looked like this, -4 squared. This is the same as -1 times 4 squared. So don't be confused with that. If you are going to multiply the negative by itself, it has to be within the parentheses. So this is like -1 times 4 squared. 4 squared is 4 times 4, or 16, and 16 times a -1 is a -16. I'm going to continue the rest of the problem right here. We've done our exponents, so the next thing we look for is multiply and divide. The only one we have is right here, which is 24 divided by 3, which is 8. And I'm going to carry over this. Oh, I lied. There's another one. Now we're going to do multiply because the divide came first. So now we have 8 times 2, which is 16. So I have -16 plus 16. We're going to use our skills from our previous lessons. A negative plus a positive, -16 plus 16 gives you 0. All right, so why don't you pause, try these 6 examples, and then when you're done, come back and we'll go over them together and we'll see how you did. All right, so the first one, there was no parentheses, there were no exponents. We have to multiply and divide left to right. We have a division. 16 divided by 2 is 8. 8 take away 5 is 3. Number 2, subtraction is first here, but we know we have to divide first. 24 divided by 8 is 3. 4 take away 3 is 1. Here we do have parentheses, so we're going to do that first. 5 take away 2 is 3. And now I have 2 times 3, which is 6. So I have 15 minus 6, which is 9. Number 4, we do the parentheses first. 20 plus 22, you should have had 42. Divided by 6 plus 1. We do the division next. 42 divided by 6 is 7. And 7 plus 1 is 8. Number 5, we have an addition, multiplication, subtraction, addition, multiplication. We definitely do multiplication first, left to right. 3 times 4 is 12. And here we can actually do this one at the same time here, which is 14. We did it left to right. We did it all on the same line. Now we have all adding and subtracting. We see here that we go left to right. So 5 plus 12 is 17. Don't be tempted to add that 8 and 14. We have to go left to right. 17 take away 8 is 9. I went left to right. 17 take away 8 is 9 plus 14. We have 23. And last but not least, we have multiply, add, divide, subtract, multiply. So we have to go left to right. 4 times 9, I'm going to write it over here, is 36. Plus, we have an 8 divided by 2, which is 4. Minus, and a 6 times 5 is 30. So I did left to right all in one step. Now I have adding and subtracting. We go left to right again. 36 plus 4 is 40. Take away 30 is 10. All right, let's keep going. Now, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. The P stands for parentheses. Parentheses always come first. However, there are other ways to remember it. One is GEMS. The first letter is G, and that is for grouping symbols because we don't always use parentheses. We do have parentheses. However, at sometimes we have these braces, or sometimes we use brackets. So any of these three count as parentheses. And later on, you'll see that absolute value are also considered grouping symbols. When grouping symbols appear inside each other, we work from the innermost and then outward. And this is often why we have different grouping symbols, because we're trying to differentiate where the beginning and end is for each set as one's inside of the other. So if you notice here, we have 4 times the quantity 25 minus the quantity 5 minus 2 squared. We have two sets of grouping symbols. We're going to work to the innermost and then outward. So here I'm going to write this 4 times 25 minus, and now I'm going to do what's in the parentheses. 5 take away 2 is 3, and that has a square to it. I've now eliminated the inside grouping symbols, but I still have to work to the outside ones here. Inside, I have a subtract and an exponent. We know that exponents come first. So we do 3 squared, which is 3 times 3, which is 9. At this point, we're just left with multiplying and the subtraction, but that is it within parentheses, so we have to do that first. So if we take 25, take away 9, we have 16. Now at this point too, if you're more familiar with parentheses, you can switch to parentheses once you get rid of the other set. 4 times 16 is 64. So we did the innermost set, we simplified our powers, we performed the operations inside the brackets, and now we multiplied. So take a second, try these. You do the innermost ones first. If there are more than one set, work left to right, follow your order of operations, and check back in a second and see how you did. Okay, so 17 is going to stay here. We only have one set of grouping symbols here. Inside, we have a subtract, divide, and add. So we know that this divide comes first. I'm going to change these to parentheses because we typically don't like to make those braces. They're a little difficult for many students. 18 divided by 6 is 3. So I'm going to do negative 3 here plus 3. I'm still within my grouping symbols. I have a subtract and add. We're going to go left to right. 6 take away 3 is 3. And now I have 3 plus 3, 17 minus 6. So you should have had 11. All right, number 10. We have these outer grouping symbols, and then we have 2 inner ones. We're going to do the inner ones first, and as always, we're going to go left to right. So my first one's out here, 72 divided by 6. You're going to do that one first, and then you're going to do the 11 plus 3. So we always work, excuse me, left to right. All right, so 72 divided by 6, we have 12 minus, I'm going to keep this 5 out front here, and 11 plus 3 is 14. And now I'm going to put my outer ones again. So I'm going to make these look more like brackets to see the difference. And we have a plus 10 out here. Now inside, we're going to multiply first because we're not going to subtract 12, take away 5, because this is 5 times 14, or technically it's negative 5 times 14. So I have 12, and again, it's a negative times a positive, so it's going to be negative. And 5 times 14 is 70. Still working within our grouping symbols. 12 take away 70 is going to be a negative number. Now, going back to an earlier lesson, if you know you're going to end up with a negative number, you could go off to the side and say, what is 70 take away 12? Well, you're going to use your borrowing technique. We have 58, but because 70 take away 12 is 58, 12 take away 70 must be negative 58. And we have a plus 10 at the end. Going back to our adding rational numbers, we have a negative and a positive. We're really going to subtract these. 58 take away 10 is 48. And we look at both numbers. 58 is larger than 10, so we're going to keep the sign of 58 and make it negative 48. Last but not least, we have these outer brackets here, and we have inner ones right here. So we're going to do the innermost first. 6 plus 5 is 11. And now we have times 2 minus 8, and that's all divided by 7. We are still working within grouping symbols. We see multiply should come first, so that's 22 minus 8, and we have divided by 7. Excuse me. So 22 minus 8, we're going to come up here. We have 14 divided by 7, and we get 2. All right. Now we're going to continue with our order of operations by evaluating expressions. So we're going to take the value that they gave us for the variable, and we're going to plug it in and then follow the order of operations. So if I put a 3 where the x is, we are not going to subtract this first because this is multiplying and this comes first. So negative 3 times 6 is negative 18. 10 take away 18 is a negative 8. That is the same as 10 plus a negative 18. You would take the difference and keep the sign of the larger one. All right, so here we're going to plug in. We have 4 squared on the outside. We're putting a negative 2 in for the x. We're going to substitute that there. And now we're going to follow our order of operations. We're going to do inside the parentheses first. So we're going to keep 4 squared out there. Negative 2 plus 3. We're adding opposite signs, so we're going to subtract the numbers. 3 take away 2 is 1, and we're going to keep the sign of the larger one, which is 3, so it will remain positive. We know if we multiply anything by 1, we get the same value. 4 squared is 16, so our answer is 16. take a second, pause, plug in 2 for the first one and 6 for the second one, and then come on back and see how we do. All right, so we have 14 plus. We're going to plug the 2 in, substitute 2 for x, divided by 4. According to the order of operations, we do exponents first. So 2 squared is 4. And now we're left with an addition and a division. This definitely comes first. 4 divided by 4 is 1. So I have 14 plus 1, which is 15. And last but not least, we have 2 sets of grouping symbols. There's not one within each other, but we still work left to right. First, I will substitute the 6 in for the x. And we'll just do this right here. 2 plus 6 is 8. So now, 2 squared will come first because that's the exponent. So that's 4. So we have 6 times 4, which is 24. We're going to divide it by 8. And our answer is 3. All right, so that's 1.6. Tomorrow we will go over more examples and have you do some activities. Thanks. Have a good day.